So on this episode, we are really going to focus very much from a small business owner's perspective in terms of what the recruitment industry really looks like, I guess, looking from the other side of the fence, and some of our experiences. Really raw, really honest. And I've got one question that I've been dying to ask, which is, why are recruitment agencies so fucking expensive?
Oh, this is one that's going to get me in trouble, I think, having worked both sides of the fence. So anyone that's looked at my LinkedIn profile will know that I've worked for big corporate recruiters. I've done senior appointments in the kind of big Ivory London Tower.
Boo.
I've run my own small recruitment agency when I first moved to the Southwest. And then maybe I saw the light and went into internal talent and went on that journey as well. So, which has brought me round to where we first met for a coffee and chewing the fat over recruitment to where we are now and launching Blinker. So maybe I have a bit of a unique insight, and I'll try not to share too many dark secrets. But the reality is it is expensive. There's no two ways around it. If it's cheap and you aren't paying very much for your service, like anything, you're probably not going to get a very good service. So can you work with a recruiter and not pay a lot of money? And when I say a lot of money, you're talking £2,000-4,000. Yes, absolutely. But if you're hiring someone meaningful into your business, someone that as a small company is going to have an impact that you need, you've got to sign up for an expectation of a service you're going to get. So recruitment and the word expensive, I think, is quite interesting. The perception of cost and value is really important. And maybe I think that's where a lot of small business owners have the perception that a recruitment agency is expensive, because the reality is they might have had a conversation with a recruiter that they've never spoken to before, briefed them a role, that agency has sent them 2 or 3 CVs, and then they've hired someone and it's cost them 5, 10, 15, 20 grand. So perceptually, they've sent me 3 CVs and I've paid them 10 grand. That's a lot of fucking money, right? For 3 CVs. Because it is. What's going on under the hood is probably where the value comes in. And I would say, like a lot of sales industries, the recruitment industry doesn't do itself any favors. When you're driven by KPIs and metrics, you can become blinkered by putting bums on seats, because you only get paid when that person starts that job. Right, in 9 times out of 10, when you're talking contingent recruitment, so you're really motivated to get anyone to start that job. So are you going to paint the real honest truth to that client about the candidates you're presenting? In that model, that contingent model, you aren't really motivated by the future success of that hire, because you're getting paid on that person starting that job, not what they're doing in 6, 12, 18, 24 months' time. Yes, you hope it works out and it's great and you build that relationship. But the reality is, for most small businesses, they're working in that way. That lends itself to a really negative experience. And that, for me, is where that perception of it's really fucking expensive, because it is. But I think most people are willing to spend good money on a good service and a good outcome. So there lies a real issue in the starting point. But I will say, there's a lot of recruiters out there that just don't do themselves any favors and don't do the industry any favors. There are some brilliant recruiters out there making fantastic money, charging clients huge sums, because they know their industry, they know everyone in that industry, and they are the only person you can speak to if you want to fill that role, because they've just spent years building their network and really understanding their clients and candidates. If you are in that space where you need that service, a recruitment agency is absolutely the way to go. But the reality is, as a small business owner, do you have the time to go out and vet all the agencies, understand who are the good ones, who are the bad ones, who are going to represent your brand properly, who are going to look after the candidates as part of that process? Are they feeding back, etc.? The reality is probably no. And so we find there's that disconnect. And that's the reality of why Blinker exists, because there needs to be that blended experience where the focus for Blinker and other solutions out there isn't on putting that bomb on the seat. It's about seeing that business grow. And that's a really different mindset. So the mindset from an external partner, be that an agency or a technology or a hybrid, should always be on the success of the business, not am I getting paid to put a bum on a seat. So it's a really disjointed space. And what I found really interesting was the day I stepped into an internal talent role from being an external recruiter, my blanket starting point was, I don't want to work with recruiters. We need to find a way to solve this ourselves, build this properly.
How ironic.
How ironic. And it was a really kind of interesting mindset, which I just didn't experience and see, because I was like, I've been there myself, and I built my previous business on building good relationships. Most of my clients were candidates to start with. And you know, again, I say this really carefully. I know some fantastic recruiters, but you know, I know from the other side, when you don't know how the industry works, it's really hard to navigate your way to those. And so you fall into this pitfall where you just see it as an expensive, you know, resource and something you shy away from.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of truth in all of that. And for me as a business owner, and I've had many conversations with other business owners around hiring and recruitment and working with recruitment agencies, very often it actually isn't necessarily to do with the expense. It's to do with the relationship. Mm. It's to do with the fact that you never feel invested in. You never feel like, not all, and we've worked with some really good recruiters, but most of those good recruiters have been very small niche agencies or individuals that have, like you said, been very good at building a fantastic network and gives you the time and what feels like the care to try and solve this problem around finding the right talent to grow your business. And that will always come out in the wash, because if that's just a load of sales bullshit, you'll pick that up almost instantly the moment you start working with someone. But sadly, it's been 2s and 3s in the last 15 years or so that I can remember those types of relationships. And I just think that's really sad for the industry. A lot of people wouldn't give a shit because they're making a fortune. But I think there's so much more potential for recruitment agencies to be able to do things in the kind of way that we spoke about over the last couple of years, and that's developed to this point of why we've built this piece of software that is trying to help SMEs. But I think the potential of long-term wins for SMEs and recruiters are huge if the mindset shift changes. I get finding people and getting to people to even to the point of actually starting day one is huge. So I don't think you can necessarily argue based on the cost, but the experiences that I would say that the majority of people that would be listening to this have experienced as business owners, SMEs, I would say that a very, very high percentage would have to be negative. I don't ever hear someone raving about a recruitment agency and the process that they necessarily have gone through. And then what happens is they go and start to try and look at building it themselves or trying to solve the problem themselves. And it goes back to what we were saying, kind of earlier in terms of time poor, and everything kind of gets dropped. But I don't think there'll be many businesses out there that will have an issue so much with the cost, because I know there's a lot of hidden value behind that. But the way that you're made to, the experience that you have is far from one that I would ever want to replicate for our clients in terms of the kind of things that we deliver in our industry.
And I think so we come from two very, very different worlds, right? This is my world, and this is something I've lived and breathed for 15 years. And if I was to then try and step in the shoes of someone of your background, the design experience you've got, and try and even start to do your job, I do a pretty piss poor effort at it. Do you know what I mean? And now there's all these tools that you can help with, which is great. But the expectation for small businesses as you are owners is you're a recruiter as well. Like, you should know what we're doing and know what's happening behind the scenes. But why should you? Why should that be your area of expertise? You know about your business. You know the type of people you want to bring in. But how do you use all the tricks of the trade to find the right people? And to that point, I think if you are thinking about working with a recruiter, I think, like everything when it comes to hiring, take more time before you go on that journey to understand what it is you want out of the relationship. Because as much as we can sit here and slag off the recruitment industry, and I know we'll do that when it deserves it, but I will defend it when it should as well. When you engage with a recruiter, you'll only get out what you put in. So if you are of a mindset where I just want to see CVs, I'm going to speak to 4 or 5 different recruiters, and it's just a race to get the CV over to me, and we'll pay the first one who gets it through the front door. You have to sign up to the experience that you're going to be served with, which is going to be pretty poor, because the agency isn't going to spend the time speaking to the candidates and representing your brand properly. They're just, I need to get that CV through the front door, because if I'm going to get half a chance of getting paid, that's all that matters. It's a race to the bottom. But that's the reality for a lot of recruiters. That's the world they're playing in that small business owners maybe don't help the industry in terms of investing time in that relationship. But like you said, there's 2 or 3 relationships you can remember over 15 years. You nurture them, you look after them, you build personal human relationships. You give that person time to really understand your business. They can then take that away and represent your brand properly to make sure they're finding, which is the ultimate goal, the right person for you and your business. That is the ultimate goal for all of this. If your focus is, I just want to see CVs, you're not focused on finding the right person.
I think there is so much truth in that. And actually, the small business owners do need to take that on the chin, because we've been guilty. Really need to hire someone, new project that's come in. We need 2 or 3 people in the business. And it is just, I want to see as many CVs as possible. I'm going out to 4 or 5 different agencies. So I think that's absolutely fair. It's like, well, we're treating you with it, not disrespect, but it's a numbers game. So therefore, you can't expect that kind of experience off the back of it. When you flip that, and I remember one recruiter in particular in the early days must have hired 8 or 9, possibly 10 people in Evo. And even now, I will hear from him from time to time. Even now, he will engage, in some shape or form. And but we gave that individual everything. Like, it was literally the time, solely working on trying to solve, what we needed to do from a hiring perspective. So, like, it was a really well invested relationship from both sides. But obviously, you can't have one person necessarily that solves all your problems. So when there's a struggle there for whatever reasons with a particular hire, you go and have a conversation with someone else. Suddenly that dilutes that relationship. And it's like, it's being really consciously aware of how an SME kind of deals with the recruiters, with the recruitment agencies, to try and maximize from both sides a result that works for everyone.
Yeah, and there's one critical point in the middle. We're in a sales industry. Recruitment is a selling industry. That probably isn't the best mentality, but it is. The biggest challenge is the product, the commodity is people. And when you're dealing with people, there's so many more factors involved than trying to sell laptops to a business. You're trying to bring people in and match so many different things on so many different levels. It's a really hard thing to get right, which is why it's even more important to spend the time to know the recruiter you're working with, get them to know your business, what you're about, who they are, because they're making assessments on such a higher level than a physical object. They're thinking about, is this right for that person, the salary, their family, their time, their future career prospects, etc. Does that match with, we need to do this for our business and we need this personality profile? It's really complicated. It's not an easy job. It's not an easy thing to get right, and it takes a long time to do that. So again, investing time in that relationship before you have that pressure point, that moment of, shit, this project's come up, we got to bring someone in now, you're way too late. You're way too late, because it's really complex. Any recruiter coming into the conversation at that point isn't going to know you well enough to do the right job for you. They might get lucky. They will be able to match some skills with a job spec, but that's only part of the conversation. We all know that. You know, you think about the best people you've ever hired, the ones you've worked with, the people you still have relationships now. Could you ever put their jobs on job specs, especially in a small business? Probably not. They just came in and they were perfectly aligned for where you are as a business, and where they were in their journey, and that's when the magic happens. You can't do that off matching CVs with job specs. You just can't. People will make money from doing that, and there will be some success, but it's not a real viable way to solve bringing people into your company.
That's why I get so super excited by what we're building at Blinker, because all the years of experience that both of us have had in terms of building businesses, hiring, hundreds of people, really, like, in a variety, whether it's in businesses or whether it's our own businesses, trying to build a solution that empowers the business owner to do the things that they are responsible for. And a lot of what we were saying earlier in terms of, from a brand, from a communication, from a mission perspective, what is it that you're trying to tell the world for someone who wants to come in and be part of what you're trying to build? The technology that enables you to save time, as well as the expertise, an invested expertise in a relationship that allows you to do the things that are very specialized within a recruiter's talent or remit. Bringing that together in what we've built, I think, is incredibly powerful. And the real icing on the cake is the fact that actually it is really affordable. Like, it is a very affordable solution to bringing people into your business. So it's the best parts of everything that we've learned that's kind of coming into the box.
And we're seeing that already when we're delivering work for clients, which is fantastic. But at the same time, this isn't about removing recruiters from the face of the earth. They have a really valuable place to play in the market and in bringing great people together. When you have those experts who understand their market, understand the candidate pool, understand the geography, they understand you as a business, and it can work in harmony alongside that. That's really important, because then we're able to support those great recruiters doing great work with the great businesses looking for great people. And that's really, really important to help them navigate that really tricky space. Question I have for you in terms of your experience working with recruiters, and you've touched on it already in terms of those 2 or 3 that you felt did a great job. Define what that great job meant to you in terms of, was it they were able to turn around a great shortlist really quickly? Was it, they just didn't charge much? Was it the impact that people they had in the business, they brought in had on the business? What would you quantify as, that great outcome for you?
The 2 main parts that I always focused on was, 3 parts. Their investment in really understanding what we were trying to solve and how this person would help us solve that particular next stage of growing the business, or building the service or the product, or whatever a business does, and getting to a position. And it wasn't about time. I mean, if you plan your business effectively, then you shouldn't be necessarily behind the curve. Sometimes you are, if people leave the business to kind of think, we need to bring someone in. We've got a client that's already being serviced, etc. But the thing that was always the standout was, it wasn't one individual that they brought towards us that was strong. The ones that stood out, and this one in particular, every 3 or 4 people that would be shortlisted, it was a hard decision to decide who was coming into the business. And I would say a very high percentage, obviously I've hired a lot of people over the years, so I can't remember exactly the kind of number, but it was a very high percentage that had stayed in the business for a long period of time. And irrelevant of how long someone's in the business, their impact was extreme. They really added value to the business and hopefully to their sales and the career. The fit was perfect. So it was a case of really investing in understanding what we were trying to do, giving us as many options as possible. And that led to a really, really good experience for everyone involved. It had less to do with the time frame. It certainly had less to do with how much it was going to cost us. Those elements were, because you can't get people around the table at that quality unless someone's really doing their job very, very well.
Yeah.
But like you said earlier, that was on us as well. There's a lot of time and investment that goes into that, and building that relationship or being present and making sure that we're doing everything we need to do to help the recruiter deliver that for us. It is definitely two-way.
100%. And at the centre of all of it is the candidate still. What is happening to that candidate experience? And I don't think enough businesses challenge recruitment agencies on that. Okay, so we've hired one person. How many people have you spoken to through this process? What have you told them about us? Have they had feedback? Do they know this isn't going to progress? Et cetera, et cetera. Because they are a partner of yours. They are representing your brand. You are putting your brand as an employer in someone else's hands. So question that. What do they do with X, Y, and Z process? How do they look after those candidates? Do they have any agreements in terms of feedback timeframes? What do they need from you to be able to nurture that candidate pool for you? So that the one person you hire is exactly the right person that you want, but everyone else goes away from the process feeling valued and understanding that, you know, you are still an employer of choice. And the reason you've used an agency or recruiter on that specific time is because it was the right solution for where your business is at that point in time. And the reality is, it goes back to something we talked about in episode 1. It's that challenge between time and money. You know, are you time poor, but you have the money to be able to find a solution, a partnership, a tech solution like Blinker? Or are you a founder that has the rare privilege of lots of time and want to really dive into that because that is the best thing for your business, because the growth is being looked after elsewhere? 9 times out of 10, it's not the latter, it's the former. You know, you need to find the right solution. And hopefully businesses get to that point where they start thinking, we need to bring in this solution in-house and step away from those external platforms, those external recruiters that cost that money. And we're now getting to a point where we're bringing in enough talent through constantly year on year that we now need to think about bringing that resource internally, and then that transition changes to finding the right person to do that, and then finding the right tools for that person to be able to still deliver the volume and the quality, because the conversation is very different at that point.